On today's Patriot Nation podcast, we are breaking down the second preseason game, an absolute butt whooping. The Patriots laid down on the Eagles 35-0. Tons of reaction to talk about, tons of things to talk about. It's going to be a heck of a show, so buckle up and cue the music. Gentlemen, that was pretty good. Pretty good all around. I mean, just an absolute butt whooping.
Yeah, it was. I thought pretty much all three phases of the game were just about perfect. I mean, it's unfortunate it's just a preseason game, right? And, you don't want to take too much stock into it simply because the Eagles virtually played nobody, right? I was actually pretty excited to see Jalen Hurts. I thought that would have been really cool. I guess an illness right before kickoff kind of knocked him out. Who knows what the deal is with that, but
it was an abdomen just came out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And appendicitis or something like that.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it really started with the opening drive, right? You get that big play from Judon knocking that ball out. You go and you punch it in just 2 plays. And then from there on out, I think Cam played extremely well. I thought that was the best he's really thrown the ball since week 2 at Seattle. I think that was I know it's a preseason, so you don't want to, harp on it too much, whether it's good or bad, but I thought he looked really good. I thought Mac looked really good. I think the biggest thing from the quarterback perspective is you saw an improvement from last week to this week. And I thought both of them were good last week too, right? It was just kind of a small sample size. That was really weren't taking many shots. They weren't really opening up the playbook too much. But, I guess starting there, I thought both of them looked really sharp.
Yeah, top thing for me is, like, I think we mentioned it last week, just command. Like, both of them had everybody where they needed to be, kind of ran everything the way it was supposed to be run. And Cam, watching him set his feet, move up in the pocket, set his feet, kind of get his body right before he makes a throw, and then fire a couple of darts like that ball to Jacoby Myers. It was a great ball, to start off the second drive. They didn't have to throw it on the first drive, stuff like that. And then Mac Jones purely throwing the football, nothing to complain about. I mean, he had a almost perfect night throwing the ball.
Yeah, and listen, the thing is that if Cam plays like that, he's the week 1 starter, right? Like, I mean, if he plays that way, the Patriots are going to go 12-5 and potentially win the division and be a really tough out in the playoffs. The question is, can he do that consistently? And I don't know the answer to that, right? That's going to be the question, is can he do that consistently? But if he plays that way, and he didn't even run tonight. So if he plays that way and then you combine that with his running and the defense that they have, it's going to be outrageous what they can do. But on the other side of it, Mac throwing the ball looked very good. He had that one really risky throw at the beginning across the middle of the board.
First throw of the game.
Yep. He got the jitters out, and he was throwing darts left and right. The Nikhil drop obviously was an absolute dime. And what's crazy is he did it differently. He took a long, slow, methodical drive at the end of the first half, and then he came out to start the second half, and it was a quick up-tempo no-header. I mean, it was unbelievable. So even if he doesn't start this year, I mean, my goodness, he looks like he's going to be a good player.
I said it. I mean, the preseason takes, like, obviously they can kind of get lost, but I think this one's, you can kind of look at, I've obviously been down there at camp. You've seen progression. You've seen, just how comfortable he looks day in and day out from a week to week perspective, right? It's just each day he continues to get better. And I think that's all they're looking for. And I think, like you said, Cam Newton's their week 1 starter. There is zero question about that. He's going to start week 1. I think if anything, the leash is a lot shorter than maybe we would have thought in April. I think that's what everybody can maybe agree on. But like you said, he plays like he did tonight. I mean, they didn't have their 2 tight ends, and they're going to run heavy, 12 and 22. They're going to be on the field for 85% of the game. And they looked, efficient moving the ball. I think it's a great situation to have with both of these guys playing well. And I said it, Mac Jones looks this good right now. I cannot wait to see what he looks like in a year from now. He'll be in his NFL body. He'll be a year under his belt. The sky's the limit for him from what we've seen so far. And it's been about a month. And like I said, the good thing with both of them is they're improving each day, week to week. And I think that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and the exciting thing from Jones tonight, what I saw was you got a glimpse of what he needs work on. It wasn't just a perfect night, and you can't really get anything out of nights like that because everything went well. And who knows? What do you look like when you face adversity? At the end of the first half, that was an ugly 2-minute drill that they ran.
Yep.
It was a shit show, right? And they end the first half on a whimper, and it's kind of like, oh, that sucked. And then they come out in the second half, and they marched down the field in like 3 minutes and scored a touchdown, right? So it's one of those things where you got to see him kind of bounce back from some adversity, stuff like that. And you can only hope that you'll be able to see a little bit more of that going forward. Like, maybe you don't want adversity, but when it's going to be there and you're going to need to have your quarterback bounce back. And that's exactly what he did. And for his first shot at it, that's perfect.
Yeah, and you mentioned the end of the first half. I mean, I tweeted out the Brady gif because Mac's got to know the drive. He's got to know the down. I mean, it's third down. You can't spike the ball on third down. Now I know it's preseason, and I know you're basically at midfield, but run a play. Just get up there and run a play because you can't.
And there was 30 seconds left.
Third down.
Like, there was time.
Right. So you just get up to the line, and now listen. Are the coaches in his ear saying spike, spike, spike? Like, I don't know. Right. I don't know the answer to that question, but like, it doesn't matter. Like, get up to the line and run a play because you just wasted your last time out because N'Keal gets hurt on a perfect throw. And listen, if N'Keal doesn't jump, it's a touchdown, right? He's walking in for a touchdown. I mean, that's, what are you going to do? But like, you can't make that mistake then on third down and spike the ball instead of going for it. So, but
that situation, that's the NFL. Like, people fuck up. People make, people make mistakes. Like, you're the quarterback. You have to help everybody else bounce back. And he did that, starting the second half.
Yep. I agree. So speaking about adversity, let's go over to the kicker. Quinn Nordine, who had been perfect at Gillette Stadium until he missed one extra point, was brutal tonight. First extra point was going to the right, went in, but it was definitely going to the right. His next three, the last of the three that he missed was not even close, not even the same zip code. And he pushed them all to the right. And it was bad. But then he came back, hit an extra point, and then hit like a 30-something yard, 32, 33-yard field goal. Like, 26. That's the type of thing where he's an undrafted rookie. He definitely had some struggles with consistency in Michigan, but I was happy to see him go through that adversity, right? Go through that adversity and then come out on the top, come on the other side of it, hitting his last two kicks of the night. So I was happy to see that. Of course, we don't know what the deal is with Nick Folk. We haven't seen him in 2-3 weeks. So it seems like he's not going to be ready. So Nordine's your kicker. So it's just a question of, what's going to happen. And I thought tonight was a good example of him fighting through adversity and making some kicks at the end of the day. I
thought so too. And before we move on, Pat, this is a question for you because me and Keegan were on this. We were okay with it from the start. So why don't you answer this? Because I'm not throwing you under the bus, but I think you can explain. Because, right, I mean, you weren't sold on him at first, but I think you're there now.
I was not. Yeah, listen, I was not. I certainly wasn't Taylor Kyles, when they drafted him, but I didn't love him. I didn't look. And for those of you that are listening in podcast form and not watching on YouTube, somebody asked, Danilo Scalzo asked, from the draft perspective that you guys had about Mac Jones and today, what's changed? And so I think that dark blue gold, I was eating my whole hand on pick number 10, not number 15. I was pissed that they didn't trade up for Fields. The Mac pick was the right pick, but I wanted them to trade up for Fields, obviously, as everyone did.
I was broken. People,
right? I mean,
I wasn't. I was okay. I was positive that night. I'm gonna sit back
you were.
And enjoy this
That's
conversation.
True. You weren't on with us when it happened. You were positive that night. Listen, I think Mac kind of always hit their system. He's not sexy, right? I mean, he looks okay. He's not sexy though.
Balls out quick, Balls out quick, man.
Well, that's it. Like, but he's not like he's not the arm. I mean, Justin Fields, just with the arm talent and the speed and the swagger and everything else, it's like, man, like that's
what it is, right? Like, during the draft, your draft stuff's all about traits. It's not about what situation you're going to end up in and what system you fit best in. Like, no one thinks about that. No one's like, oh, maybe Mac would fit in New England system better. No, it's like, oh, Justin Fields can throw the ball 90 yards. That's awesome. Like,
Right.
that's what the draft's about.
Right. And it's, and Mac Jones, and listen, I got to give Phil Perry all the credit in the world. Phil said from day one, stay at 15 and draft Mac Jones. And I consistently had them trading out or trading up or, whatever, and not taking Mac. But in the back of my head, it was always kind of like, well, he does kind of fit what they do, but it's like not, I don't know, like what can he do? And he played in such a good offense that you wonder, like, was it the guys around him? Was he, but I mean, he just, every single thing that they've thrown at him, every single thing, he just deals with it all, and he runs the offense
too. And I think that's half the battle, especially when you jump from the college to pro game. I think that's the biggest thing you can take from him. And not to cut you off, but he that, like you said, he's not sexy. He's not going to wow you with his athleticism. I see this. He processes it well, and the ball's out. I think that's the most important thing you can see. What are we, a month into his end? He was drafted just over 100 days. I think last Thursday, he was like, it was 100 days.
Yeah.
Or
so
105,
like 112 or
something
like that.
Something like that, right? So
yeah,
the progression he's made, I don't think anybody saw this, even the coaching staff, about how advanced he is at this point in his career. So like I said, from the beginning, it's great that both of these guys are playing well, because ultimately, like Belichick said just before we got on about the running back room, the competition brings out the best in players, and it's a great situation to have.
Yeah. No, I agree. And here they are, like, running this offense, and he gets a chance to work and learn under Cam. And if Cam keeps playing the way he played, again, like, they're going to be really, really good. So it's, they're gonna be in a Kansas City 2017 situation where they have a good quarterback, they have a young guy underneath him, and it's kind of what we envisioned for Mac. When they drafted him, kind of like, hey, let's do the Kansas City model and this and that. And then he's been impressive, and Cam's been so. But if Cam's going to play this way, I mean, and who knows? Like, Philadelphia didn't start any of the starters tonight. Like, no Fletcher Cox, no Brandon Graham, no none of those guys. None of them played. So, like, I guess you don't know totally. But we'll see what happens. But I mean, if Cam plays this way, I can't imagine that you see Mac at all this year.
Yeah, he's gonna learn how to slide. That's the big thing that I saw from today. Like, he's gonna tear something with these slides. So
yeah,
gotta work on that. But in all seriousness, like you said, when you draft a guy like that and you've got a quarterback who started for you last year and you just re-signed him, the idea is the Kansas City model. You've got a veteran quarterback. Don't even let this kid hit the field unless it's a throwaway game in week 17 or week 18 this year. Like, you let this guy sit and soak everything in for as long as possible, and then you unleash him when he's fully ready. So at this point, we're saying the same thing every week. Like, they both played well today. That's really all there is to it, right? Like, they both played well. They saw similar competition. It was mostly backups for Philly. They did what they were supposed to do.
Right. By the way, before we continue, Schefter just tweeted out that Jalen Hurts was sent to a Philadelphia hospital and diagnosed with a stomach infection and told to stay at home and rest for at least 2 days. He tested negative for COVID. I don't know what a stomach infection is, but apparently he has it. So
we'll take back
like
the quote unquote
poisoning.
Abdomen. Yeah.
I know, right? Well, I guess stomach and
abdomen, it's all the same thing.
So, but anyways, let's get to the running backs, because, I thought Sony looked great today. Damian Harris is Damian Harris. Like, Damian's the guy. He's the guy. Like, and I was having discussions about this. It's funny because people the overreaction swings that you get from, like, fantasy Twitter, right? Where it's like, Damian Harris runs for a touchdown, looks good. And people are like, oh my God, you're too low on Damian Harris. And Sony comes in and looks good. And Stevenson comes in and looks good. And they're like, oh, you're too high on Damian Harris. Like, I don't feel, and it's like, dude, like, he's RB1. Like, he's going to score 10 touchdowns. He's going to rush for 1,200 yards. Like, he's going to be a guy that's going to be consistently good over the course of time. Now, is he going to get 400 carries this year? No, he's not. He's not going to get a ridiculous amount of carries, but he's going to be effective when he is. And let me tell you something. And we saw it a little bit. All right. When we saw it a little bit. The toss sweep, the crack sweep that they run is going to be unstoppable with these new rules where the D-backs can't go low on the lineman coming out.
Pulling
It's going to
guard.
be unstoppable. Now, Philly towards the end of the game started to read it because they knew it was coming, so they sent like 4 linebackers out there that way. But that's going to be even better because if you have Cam under center and you fake that toss crack, and he's just going to naked bootleg out, and there's going to be nobody there. And then it's just going to be like, oh, okay, I'll either run for 10 yards or hit somebody wide open coming across the field or whatever the case may be. So they're going to be a problem running the ball. And you mentioned Sony before. Like, Sony has shown the ability now to catch the ball out of the backfield, which we knew he could do in Georgia. So either he stays with the Patriots, which I think is the best option, or they move him somewhere else, and they get something in return back for him. I mean, it's just this running back room, and we've talked about before, this running back room looks really good. And that spin move by J.J. Taylor today was, wow.
They're all versatile too. They all kind of bring different things to the table, which I think helps them,
Right.
It helps them offensively, right? I mean, I think they're grooming Stevenson to kind of be that change of pace guy, right? Like kind of like a Rex Burkhead, but a little bit more powerful. I think that's a complete back right there. Obviously, as of right now, you have Sony through this year. So it's interesting. Like I did a 53-man projection. Yeah. That like they may keep 6 running backs, right? Like I guess you can, throw Stevenson on IR, but kind of just didn't want to get into those weeds in a projection, right?
Right.
But I think all of them have made a case, and obviously Bolden's more of a special teamer. He's probably going to be your kick returner, but of those 5, they've all made a case to earn snaps this year. I think Taylor can be kind of groomed into that next James White guy, right? If he can hold up in pass protection and really master that part of the game, because I think that's what's so valuable about White that people don't realize is how good he is in pass protection. But yeah, I mean, Stevenson, right? And the fumble at the end, obviously that's going to be talked about, and that's probably going to be brought up the first thing on film tomorrow in that room. But that's like when you look at the team from last year to this year, right? Like their win total from Vegas hasn't really changed much. It's 9.5. I guess you could up it to 10 if it was a 16, a normal 16-game season. They're 1 game better than last year, but when you look at the positional groups, they're just loaded with depth, right? Like it's not overflowing with like elite talent, but I think their depth goes a long way in the amount of versatile players they have on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and just to finish up on the running back group, like you've got, if the worst thing that you see out of the group is a guy who ran for 100 yards, fumbled the ball late in the game, everybody kind of freaked out a little bit, but the nice thing was they put him right back out there. Next drive, I mean, he got the first down and then they kneeled it. So whether that was J.J. Taylor's helmet exploded and they physically couldn't put him back in or what, like who knows, but they gave him another shot. They put the ball in his hands again, which is not something you would expect, from Bill. That's just, we saw it with Stephen Ridley. His career ended. He fumbled once and that was it. See ya, bye-bye, you're gone. So, but with that group, you've got White, who is your finisher, like he's your closer. You end the games with White. You've got Harris and Michelle, who are both in between the tackles guys who can mix in a little bit of blocking and obviously we saw with Michelle today, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. Like you've got guys for every situation in the game that you could possibly need. Stevenson looked like a bruiser today. J.J. Taylor, you can't get a hand on him. Like you've got somebody for every possible situation you would need. And that's the perfect thing for like a guy like Josh McDaniels, especially this year when you're going to be running so many different formations and personnel grouping, stuff like that. You can mix and match. So why wouldn't you keep all of these guys to be able to do that when you end up trading Sony or you cut J.J. Taylor? You're not going to be able to do that, right? So I think it's worth taking a flyer on keeping all of those guys, right?
Right. Well, and the other part of it too is that if you put Stevenson on IR before the initial 53, he's done for the year.
Gone.
So he has to get through that initial 53. Even if you want to put him on IR, that's fine. But the issue is that, especially with Sony's injury history, if you're going to keep Sony and Damian Harris, you want to have Stevenson as a backup plan just in case, right? And that's one of those things. And Cody mentions the 2 back sets. and they were running out with J.J. Taylor and Ramondre Stevenson for the most part. But when you got Cam back there in the shotgun, and you got two backs next to him, and it's White and Michelle, or it's Harris and Michelle, or Harris and White, or whatever the combination is, it's gonna be really tough to stop. That's gonna be really tough to stop, especially where any one of those three guys can get the ball. And now you're like, we have no idea where it's going or who's getting it. And so their running attack is going to be very good. And again, we've talked about their offensive line, who dominated at the point of attack again today. Really, again, I know they're playing against second stringers, but still, they dominate the point of attack again, and they're going to run the hell out of teams. And that's really how they're going to win. And then we saw Jacoby Myers getting open again. I mean, Myers is going to eat this year, dude.
He is, and to your point, they're going to bully teams both on defense and offense up front. I think that the strength of this football team is their front seven, specifically along the defensive. I mean, when's the last time you saw them? They like in the past two games, they've had like 4 or 5 run stops on like 3rd and short.
Yeah.
And it starts with Judon. I think Barmore's, it's going to be so hard to keep that guy off the field, but you have a ton of depth there. I think that's a guy who you shine Henry Anderson. And I know he kind of plays, he doesn't necessarily play that spot, but I think Barmore's, it was his debut today. I've seen him a little bit. He's been battling a toe thing, but and one-on-ones, that dude's just too powerful, too quick and explosive. They're just going to bully teams up front. And like you said, on offense, that running attack, especially with Cam, like it's going to be good old bully ball. Like you thought we saw it last year, it's going to be even better this year because you have maybe Stevenson in the mix. You got to change a pace back with him, and it's just the sky's the limit for that rushing attack. I know people don't want to hear that in the 2021 NFL, but that's how they're going to beat teams.
Run the wishbone. Who cares? Like if it works, right?
And not just
throw
that,
4 running backs back there. Who cares?
Right. And dude, we've talked about it. Like the defense, the NFL is going smaller, faster. That's what they're doing, right? There's an emphasis on having smaller guys that run faster. So if you just pick up a bunch of big dudes who run people over, defenses aren't set up for that. And so they're like, wait, you're telling me we need like our linebackers that are like 225 pounds got to take on like guards and tackles? No, our guy's supposed to play in space. But no, we're running downhill and pounding you in the face over and over and over again. And so, it's kind of like Belichick is zigging while the rest of the league is zagging. And, doesn't necessarily have the speed that everyone else has, but is going to win.
I just think it's knowing your team too, right? They can't spread it out. They don't have the skill on the outside to do that. It's like, this is what our football team's good at. It runs through our offensive line.
Right.
We get the backs and the quarterback to do it. That's just how they're going to be teams. And I'm not saying Cam can't sit back there and improve in the pocket and improve downfield. That's not his game. It never really was, and it isn't at this point in his career. But they can certainly be a valuable offense in the league by doing that.
And when did all this start? Right, 2018 down the stretch, going into the that Super Bowl run was handed off to Sony and Rex, throw it to White short, and let your defense eat like. That's the last time they were truly successful was following this formula. So why wouldn't they try to do it again, especially with improved talent and depth across the board?
Right. Exactly. So, and you mentioned, Spags mentioned the defense, and, that's another spot where they just have so much depth on the defensive line and the edge. And I thought Harvey Lange played, or Lange, however you pronounce it, played fantastic tonight, after having a really bad first preseason game. But he was doing what he's best at, which is attacking the football and playing downhill and not playing in space. Do not play him in space because he stinks. But like playing downhill, he has an opportunity to be the 53rd man on the roster. Like he has a chance to do that. Judon, and Josh just said it down here, Judon is the truth. Like he is an absolute monster. He looks unbelievable. Uche played well. He left with an injury, so we'll see what happens there. You mentioned Barmore. I thought at the beginning he was getting crushed by double teams, like just absolutely crushed by double teams.
Yeah, and that first run stuff, everybody kind of attributed to Barmore, but it was really Van Noy and Carl Davis had a hell of a push up the middle.
He's
like Carl
Davis himself in the role too.
Yeah,
Davis.
so that's kind of where it was. But that's the thing, like you said, with double teams, you've got a rookie second round pick who's already commanding double teams. Like, it was against twos, but
Still.
they know, like, this kid's gonna wreck shop if we don't put a couple
Right.
bodies on him. So just having a guy like that on the field, and you saw the difference between last week and this week. It was Guy Godchow and Akeem Spence last week. This week it was Godchow, Barmore, and I think Dietrich Wise. Like, you're starting to see the different combinations that they can run up front depending on situations, and having Judon come off the edge like 2 straight weeks, and we've seen it in practice. Like, that guy coming off the edge, stopping the run it's unstoppable. You can't put a tight end on him and expect things to go well.
And you thought Gilmore was the X factor of that defense. It's number 9. I mean, he may. Is it Chandler Jones who has the most sacks under Bill Belichick?
Yes.
Right. Like, their guys don't necessarily total the most sacks. He might have 12, 13 easy.
Well,
easy.
Every year they've got like 4 or 5 guys who have like 3, 4.5, 5, 6. Right. Like, you see that every year. But that's because they rotate those guys. Like, Dietrich Wise never saw more than 40% of the snaps before last year, stuff like that. You're not taking Matt Judon off the field ever, not once. Like, that guy's staying on the field, so he'll have more than enough opportunity to go get himself some.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun, And then you get guys like Winovich, who's not even there. That's a good question. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, because like kind of off the game a little bit, kind of looking ahead. It's obviously different this year, right? With just 3 games, right? They play, then they're closed for 2 weeks. I don't even know if there's even media availability leading up to week 1. I'd be shocked, right? We've seen a decent amount of the starters the first 2 weeks. I'd be shocked if you saw Cam Newton next week. A lot of these guys, even though, right, it's their last real contest till week 1. I bet Matt gets a half, especially if Cam, the plan is for Cam to start week 1, which, I think everybody's in agreement that it is. You only got 3 quarterbacks on the roster. I don't think they're going to roll Hoyer out there for 4 quarters. So I would say a half.
I mean, yeah, and you've got joint practices with the Giants next week. Like, you're not next week, your last preseason game, you're not going to roll your starters out against the Giants for 5 days or 4 days, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. And you don't have the choice during practice to not play your starters. They're going to have to play. They're going to have to go up against the Giants ones. So once the preseason game rolls around, you're going to see a lot of Mac. You're going to see a lot of him throwing to Christian Wilkerson and Isaiah Zuber and Devin Ross, guys like that, right? Oshevsky's going to get a ton of burn at wide receiver. I think that's what I'm expecting the next time we see them kind of take the field.
I mean, shout out to my dad. My dad, who's watching right now, he thought they were going to play it like the preseason. Like the preseason of old, where the third preseason game you play, like a regular game essentially.
I think that was tonight, right? It seems like.
Yeah, but I mean, did Cam even make it into the second quarter?
I think Matt came in with like 6 or no, because that drive.
The drive took like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
so he
played maybe like
first
half,
quarter.
just like the first.
Cam only played like a minute into the second quarter, and then the Eagles had their longest drive. So Matt came in like halfway through, but Cam only played 3 series.
Right. So that's what I mean.
They should have scored on all 3.
Cam's played 5 series so far in the preseason. And like, I know that like maybe you're comfortable with him and you've seen him enjoy practice and everything else, but like that's not a lot. That's not a lot of time to be on the field actually like in game time playing. So now maybe they don't need it. Maybe they're saying like
I was going to say for a guy like him,
17 games and everything,
12 years, right? 10, 12 years, something like that.
Right.
His work and him getting better in the system is coming on the practice field.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it is going to be interesting to see what happens, but you're right, dude. I swear to God, if it's like Mac for a quarter and then Hoyer for 3 quarters, I'm just going to shut it off and be like, all right, I'm done. I can't watch Brian Hoyer for 3 quarters. I just can't do it.
I just have to shout out my guy Cody because he's absolutely right. Everybody was, Wilkerson's going to make the team because he hangs out with Matthew Slater, and Isaiah Zuber ran 1 reverse or whatever the hell the play was last year. Like, they're going to make the team. No, they're not. They were never going to make the team. Neither one of them have a shot. It was a cute.
I think Wilkerson's got a shot. I disagree with that, especially with Harry going down and
Wilkerson has a
chance.
Story. He has a chance. Wilkerson, Zuber has no chance.
Why do you need 5 wide receivers? Well, you don't. You're gonna have 4 tight ends on the roster. You're gonna have 5 running backs. You don't need 5 wide receivers.
Whoa! 4 tight ends?
Well, he's counting
Lacoste
Yak.
is making the team.
I don't think Lacoste does. I think no chance. I think it's 4. if you include Jakob Johnson.
Yeah.
Because he's, but
Either
I
way.
think they carry. It'd be obviously Bourne, Myers, and Aguilar. Gunner, who's not really a receiver, but has shown some flashes here and there. I guess you can kind of plug and play maybe halfway through the game if things go south. And I think
you're going to keep Bourne, Myers, Gunner, and Aguilar, and that's it.
No,
I think that's what I mean. I think Wilkerson.
What? No, why? This is what we talked about last week. He got hurt this week. He made a bad play. Everybody's thinks that Mac Jones is like. He ruined Mac Jones's career because he dove for a ball that he probably didn't have to dive for. I'm
assuming Harry's done for health reasons. Health reasons.
Got the wind knocked out of him, and they just took him out of the game.
Oh,
we'll see,
before
right?
Keegan, you were saying he broke his collarbone, so let's
he might have. Who knows?
Let's get on the
this
same
is what
page
I'm saying, right? It's 11:22 on the night of the game. No one knows what's going to happen. He could be out there in practice on.
I had Wilkerson over Harry in my projection this week, and I didn't get called out for it. So there you go.
I said last week Wilkerson's not making the team, so it's a cute training camp story. It happens every year. Oh, this guy's going to make the team, and then he gets cut.
Is it give him the honorary Bam Childress Award?
Yeah, Austin Carr 3 years ago, and then he got to New Orleans, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's the next Wes Welker," and then they cut him 3 weeks into the season because they're like,
"Dude, Austin Carr was 6 years ago by now." That's crazy how long Austin. He's still on the freaking Saints though.
I think he was Garoppolo's first same class, undrafted, but
2016,
Jacoby was
2014.
2014, yeah, he was Garoppolo.
Crap, that long ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I thought he was 15. I thought he came in the year after.
Well, either way,
doesn't matter. It's Austin
6
Carr.
years ago. But we just spent much longer talking about Austin Carr than we should have, which is no time at all.
I get upset when people try to diss my boy Nikhil just because he hasn't been good for their favorite football team. Get over it.
So listen, and you're right about that. It
was 2017. We were way off, all of us.
Well, it's fine. It's funny you said we were way off because Dark Blue Gold over here is insert Dumb and Dumber GIF here. Look at that. It wasn't even pertaining to that. But anyways, two things I wanted to talk about: the new rules, and we mentioned the new rules on the crack toss. With the D-backs, the rule with Henry Anderson where you got flagged for a 50-yard penalty for bull rushing. It was are you kidding me? That's a penalty.
His head kind of jolts back, so it's obviously, and this, right? They put an emphasis on this to kind of set a standard in preseason. They're going to call these ticky-tacky calls.
The tough thing is right. The tough thing is they're both engaging. They both engage with their hands, and they just bumped heads, and his head went back. I mean, it's come on, dude. I mean, that was outrageous.
The thing with that is every single time an offensive and defensive lineman touch each other, one of them is going to headbutt the other one. It's just what they do. It's whether or not it's seen or gets called, right? And like you said, Zoe freaked out because he thought Mills making a tackle was the same thing as blowing up a lineman on a block. It wasn't. He was had no idea what was going on. That's not the rule. You can tackle somebody. You just can't
can't take out the legs of a blocker.
Destroy somebody's knee when they're trying to block you, right?
Right. Which I think, which ultimately isn't a bad rule. It's just really challenging for a D-back to take on Michael Onwenu by himself, standing up.
It's definitely stupid. It's just it's their good intentions behind it. It's not the taunting rule where somebody got their feelings hurt and they decided to make a rule about it, right?
Which, by the way, the guy
John Mara.
The guy gets called for taunting for running over 4 dudes and then shouting, but the Patriots get called for taunting for all running into the end zone and celebrating. It's just
why? Because Sunday Night Football gets paid by Bud Light to
very true.
Promo that. So
that's a good point.
It's all about the money, guys. Come on.
So that's all you got to do. Run to the end zone and celebrate every time you do something good. Joejuan Williams.
I did want to talk about him. Yeah, I thought Keegan said it before the game. So before you popped on, Pat, the fact we didn't hear his name is probably a good thing. I thought it was a big opportunity for him. I had been talking about him on Twitter the last few days. They're kind of searching. Jalen Mills is not an outside guy. We've said that for a while, and he's demanded a lot of the reps from the spring and early summer. And he got the start tonight. He made a big play in the opening kickoff, a nice tackle there. Lined up a little bit, I think, for the majority of his reps out there against Devontae Smith, right? Didn't really see much thrown his way. Didn't do anything I guess that wows you. Obviously, you probably have to look at the all 22 to really get in depth of how good he was in coverage. But I thought he was good tonight. He was good last week. It was a guy who had a tough start to camp. I mean, he was getting toasted left and right to open up camp, and I think really came along the last week or so, starting with last Thursday night's game. And that's a guy that, everyone likes to rule him as a second round bust, and it's unfair to him. I think he hasn't really gotten an opportunity. I think we talked about it last week, but with Jason McCourty being a veteran and being good at his role, he just was, at a positional group with a ton of depth the last couple of years. And this year with Gilmore out, like you said last week, Keegan, it's a good opportunity to see what you got in these guys. And I think Juwan, he has the length. He's 6'3", 225. There's no reason that dude can't play outside corner. And obviously he brings some safety help, right? I don't think he's good enough, strategically to kind of play man-to-man with and just lock down his side of the field like Jackson and Gilmore do. But I think it was positive to see from him, and I think he's carving out a role, and he'll probably see a lot more snaps than we would have expected a few weeks ago.
He said it himself. I think it was last week. He was like, I'll do anything to get on the field. I'll play safety. I'll play in the slot. I'll cover tight ends, right? I'll play outside. And this week, watching him, I think he had probably a series, maybe two, where it was him following Devontae Smith around the field. Didn't hear either one of their names. He pretty much erased them. There was one replay. You can't get a ton from the TV copy, but there was one replay they showed where he was in his back pocket, right, on a vertical route up the field. And then I think a drive later, you saw Devontae Smith break Michael Jackson's ankles. Like you see what that guy can do. He can run routes. There's never been a question about that. So watching Juwan kind of stick with him a little bit, like that's a promising sign, no matter if it's a preseason game or in practice or what, right? So I think the last 7-8 days have been promising for him.
Absolutely. And listen, we're not going to sit here and talk about, trade Stephon Gilmore and have Juwan Williams as your cornerback one. But to have some depth on the outside and to have a guy that you feel like you can stick out there and he can at least do the job, that's important because they don't have that right now. And so to have a guy that you think can do that, I think is really important. Michael Jackson, you mentioned, my God, that guy's not making the team. I mean, he just it's bad.
This is 2 weeks in a row for you trying to cut somebody on the spot. Last week it was Harvey Longy, so who knows?
I know, Michael Jackson's been pretty consistently bad.
We wouldn't know his name unless, obviously he's got the name, but he fights N'Keal Harry every training camp. That's the only way you see him pop up. So
yeah, bring him back for camp every year. I'm down with that.
My favorite tweets are the Michael Jackson, N'Keal Harry buried Michael Jackson on a block, and Michael Jackson got up swinging and breaks his hand on the helmet.
Somebody tweeted out, was it Brian? I think Brian tweeted out
tell him to beat it.
Yeah, he told him to beat it. Devontae Smith told Michael Jackson to beat it. It was amazing. Fantastic. Well done, Brian. But one more rule I wanted to chat about. The screen pass rule where you can't cut guys down the field. You say. Where you can't cut downfield. That's something they're going to have to pay attention to because Ted Karras missed like 4 blocks on screen passes. One of them was the play that Belichick ended up challenging because he felt like it. On the Sony play where he just completely whiffed and Sony got blown up. Another play where he missed another guy and I think it was
Stevenson.
Was it Stevenson? Had a chance to break something and he just didn't. He just didn't block the guy. So that's something that they're going to have to really pay attention to because for a team that runs the screen effectively, not being able to cut those D-backs is a challenge for those big guys in space. So that's something that they're going to really have to work on. And I'm sure they obviously have been working on it in practice, but I would think you're going to see a lot more of it this week because they did not do a good enough job with it this week.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, I was doing the live updates for the website, so I didn't get a ton of tweets off, so I wrote some things down in my notes that I wanted to get off my chest here. The only thing that is worth saying is Josh McDaniels called 6 screen passes in a preseason game. 4 of them, James White came onto the field, and they ran a screen pass immediately. That's got to stop. If I can notice that, I'm a schmuck. If I notice that, I think Jim Schwartz or whoever the Eagles defensive coordinator is going to notice that.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous play calling out of McDaniels.
It happened 2 years ago with Sony.
The last
It was like
5 years.
It was like 75% of the time Sony was on, they were running the ball. And like 75% of the time White was on the field, they were throwing the ball. I was like, come on. Like
I said it
mix
last
up.
week. Like Tom Brady actively like destroyed screenplays on his own. He wouldn't even turn to the running back. He'd just spike it in the dirt and be like, "Oh, call another play, second down." Like
Right.
Cam's got to start doing it. Mac's got to start doing it. Stop calling screen passes every drive. It's
Right.
mind numbing.
Couldn't agree more. So overall, I mean, listen, it was 35-0. Overall, it was a good performance by the Patriots. Obviously, you know, the Eagles came out and came out with nobody, right? Weren't trying to win. It's preseason. No one's really trying to win, but like, you know, it's preseason. Like, but I think overall, I was very happy with what I saw with the Patriots. I think there's some coaching points. There's some things that guys struggled with. Guys that people were super high on. Stevenson and Nordine were like the two main topics after the game last week. They both, Stevenson had a good game, but he had a fumble, and then Nordine struggled, and so overcoming adversity is big for them. Mac Jones played great tonight. Cam played great tonight. So like, you know, they both did very well, but they also both made some, mistake here or there that like can be corrected. So not everything was perfect, even though it was 35-0. So I think that's a good thing. I'm happy to see that. I'm sure Belichick's happy to see that. And we'll see what happens. So they are. You guys have anything to add before we head out?
I'm still stuck on the screen passes.
So just a little update for you guys. Wednesday, Thursday. So it was a good question about Nick Folk. I haven't heard anything about Nick Folk yet. Nothing about Nick Folk.
I'm assuming it's a back injury. It's kind of hindered him the last few years. I'm sure it's kind of flaring up a little bit, and they're just telling him to cool it.
I mean, I'd also say like he's a 37-year-old kicker who's been in the league for 15 years.
Right.
Don't need to watch him kick in the preseason. You just don't. So
yep. So if the kid's good enough and wins the job, then he gets the job. And if he stinks and they don't feel comfortable with him, then they cut him.
It's Nick Folk's job. That's it.
Yep. Right. Exactly. Yep. So that's the deal with Nick Folk. But just so you guys know, this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Patriots are at home now with joint practices against the Giants. They have their game next Sunday night at 6:00. So that'll be fun. We'll probably do an instant reaction after the game on Sunday. I have a fantasy draft Sunday night as well, but I should be able to squeeze in the instant reaction as well. But Wednesday night this week, I will. Well, you know me, I will. I got the game on. I'll be multitasking. But Wednesday night this week, we're gonna be doing our fantasy football special this Wednesday coming up, 8:30 live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Okay, we're gonna do kind of the same format that we've been doing the last few years that we've been paying attention. We're gonna do a mock draft. We're going to talk about a million different players. We're going to talk about some draft strategies. We're going to talk about different types of drafts. So we have a few guys from Eat Sleep Fantasy, which is a site that I write for as well. Well, I haven't written for them yet, but it's a site that I contribute for as well. And so we'll have some fun with it. We got a lot of fantasy stuff coming up, so we'll talk about our stuff, and we have some segments to kind of keep the fantasy stuff going along all year. But we won't talk about that right now. But anyways, productive week. I think it's good news all around, I think, and we'll go from there. So we will see you guys Wednesday night. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.